Welcome everybody to GoLocal Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. A little news today. I want to thank Dr. Michael Fine for being on earlier. Incredibly insightful, and also raises some deep concerns about the growing number of cases, both in Pawtucket and Central Falls. Those numbers are climbing and climbing quickly. GoLocal broke a story at about noon today that a member of the JCLS staff appointed under then Speaker Murphy, but kept through under Fox and Mattiello, has been arrested on drug charges, for felony charges. Now, let's go to, I'm not sure if this is a brighter subject or a less brighter subject, but to Mike DiBiase, formerly top aide to Governor Lincoln Almond, executive with Fidelity, then director of administration for Governor Raimondo, and now he's the CEO of Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council, kind of the state's think tank behind economic modeling and foresight. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Mike, you were on, about 3 months ago. We were sitting around the table. None of us were quarantined into our offices or homes at the time. Who would have thunk? We were talking about minor little things like $200 million state shortfalls. Now we're talking about, the most dynamic healthcare crisis and economic crisis in America's history. What's your thoughts about where is Rhode Island right now?
Well, we're pretty much like the rest of the country in a lot of ways. Suffering from this, obviously, it's unprecedented. Rhode Island does have a larger proportion of tourism, hospitality, but not among the top states. We have, we do have a lot of service workers, and that can be a weakness in an economy like this. Oddly enough, we don't have as much manufacturing as we used to, which is a weakness in some states. So that probably works a bit in our favor.
Manufacturing, Governor Raimondo has kept manufacturing open. We've had folks from the Manufacturing Council as well as others on over the past few weeks. They are really trying to ratchet it up, and in many cases have shifted their business models over to manufacturing aspects of PPE or other things that are needed in the response. Are we going to see just a complete reset of what much of our economy does over the next 12 to 24 months?
It's obviously, it's hard to say. I'm not an economist. I think the economists are saying that things probably won't change that dramatically when we come out of this at some point, whether it's later this year. Some of the trends that we saw earlier are likely to accelerate. So more online business activity, declines in retail that were happening beforehand. Of course, the oil, what's happening with oil and gas was something that predated this, and it's just gotten worse. So there are going to be some very big changes in the short term, for sure.
Governor Raimondo's, I think, been properly credited with having an outstanding job retraining program, and has helped some industries like a General Dynamics, who at the time had generated a lot of new contracts for work at Electric Boat down in North Kingstown and down on the westerly border. Is that sort of dynamic of retraining folks out of hospitality, because some of those jobs aren't coming back, out of retail, just going to need to go into hyperspeed? Is that going to be critical to Rhode Island's recovery?
Yeah, it's something we should talk about. As you know, the Real Jobs program, which has been, by all accounts, very successful, was a demand-driven model. So it was based on what jobs employers needed, and we're gonna have a lot of that, because there are some shifts, but some of this is going to be retooling for jobs that we're going to have to be created. So I think we're going to have to be. I don't want us to go back to train and pray, but I think we're going to have to be a little bit more, probably a little bit more aggressive and creative in terms of trying to find how we can upskill people with more versatility for an economy that may change in terms of the mix of things.
You are well timed. The Wuhan episode broke in about the second week in December. I think you left your position as the head of the Department of Administration around the second week in December. So I'm not sure if that was insight or planned productivity of your career. But you know the budget as well as anyone. Rhode Island's budget has always been a tricky balancing act over the last decade. We now go into a really difficult budget situation. Your group has looked at this issue with in-depth and has written a report on it. Can you give us an overview of that?
Yeah, I think basically our report, which we've spent a fair amount of time on, doesn't give new estimates. That's something that's going on right now with the Revenue Estimating Conference. Instead, basically saying that if we don't get more financial help, we're going to have some severe budget problems going into actually closing out this budget and going into next year. Based on the economic forecast that the estimating conference heard yesterday, which projected that unemployment would average around 16% in the next fiscal year, we're probably looking at several $100 million in lost revenue. Some of that will be made up with the federal assistance that's come, which is very large. That $1.25 billion is a lot of money, but some of that will not be made up. So it's going to be a difficult budget.
And some of the core industries that generates the important aspects of revenue, i.e. the lottery, the casinos, etc., hospitality with hotel tax, restaurants with the restaurant tax. How do budget makers deal with that level of just shutdown, no revenue coming in on those aspects of the economy?
Yeah, I think the income taxes will probably be the biggest hit, and because the returns are not coming in until later, it's hard to estimate what those will be, but the income taxes will be a big hit. The $600 that folks are getting, the bonus unemployment per week, is actually taxable, so that's a little bit of offset. The sales tax, what we found is during recession, sales tax is actually pretty reliable because of what we tax. But in this particular instance where we have basically detached the consumers from the retailers, that's not going to be the case. So there's a lot of lost sales. Some of it will be made up. There's durables and there's cars and things that people would have bought, but as their incomes get soft, then those things get postponed. So our sale, we don't have sales tax on food and clothing or medical, so it's really on durables. It's on appliances, home improvement, construction materials, cars, so and restaurant. Restaurants, prepared foods, that sort of thing.
What's your guidance to, it's a complex situation. The governor pretty much has free spending, free decision making over the $1.25 billion that came in the initial large stimulus. We don't quite have the nomenclature down to be able to dictate what all these stimulus packages are. I believe last week's was 3.5. We need to go alphabetical or something to be able to keep them all clear. But the major stimulus that passed about a month ago, that gives the governor almost sole discretion over where those dollars go. The General Assembly obviously needs to pass a budget for next fiscal year. How are those two things going to intersect, especially when there's almost no discussion and interaction between the two?
Yeah, it remains to be seen, and actually what the federal government does next is probably most important, whether they give us more flexibility, give Rhode Island more flexibility on the federal money that's been allocated, whether there's additional money. But the way I look at it, and I believe the budget folks are looking at it, is the unbudgeted expenses, and there has been great expenses to respond, are pretty much covered by the federal government. So then they're looking at, what other expenditures can be tagged to the federal money. The thing about lost revenue is it's only a problem to the extent that you want to spend it. So less revenue is really expenditures. And so they're going to be looking at, can the education aid be attached to federal money somehow? Can other expenses be moved? And how, to what extent can you do that and get from here to there? But it looks like the whole will be very, very large, and then it comes down to making some difficult decisions. One thing we said in the report, Josh, was, we need to take care of people who are most in need, and it's a different set of people than we ordinarily have. We need to try to stay competitive as a state. We have been making some progress in terms of our economy and our business attraction. And then we need to think about strategically. I mean, we have some one-time money. We can actually do some things that are more planful. So is there an ability, and maybe we can't afford it, but is there an ability to kind of reorder our priorities and think about, can we position the state? And I'm not necessarily smart enough to know at this point what that, whether that's internet access or transportation, or is it something in healthcare? But is there something that we can gain an advantage, or energy or something like that? But it would be, and I'm sure the governor, her folks, and people in the legislature are thinking about this as well. Can we actually, take advantage of some opportunities? A lot of people say there's going to be more insourcing of the supply chain. So, can we take advantage of that? So I think people should be thinking about those kind of things. Obviously, everyone's going to be plugging holes, but we should be thinking longer term too.
Don't we have to? I mean, you brush it. You're understate your expertise on this. You've worked through 2 administrations in senior roles. You know this budget well, and you know the structure of our workforce. There's 56,000 in hospitality. There's 50,000 in retail. Almost all of those people are out of work right now, almost all of them. And many of them, in a year from now, won't come back to work. And we can argue about what the percentage is. Don't we need to build a strategy to build de facto, don't waste the crisis, and build a new economy in Rhode Island?
Well, Josh, you and I talked about this before the crisis, and I definitely swear I knew nothing about the coming crisis from Wuhan when I left. But we talked about the fact that we have still struggled before this to transform our economy to a higher skill, higher value workforce, and I think this is a place to take advantage of that. Can we retool some things and, maybe the word is leapfrog, but somehow get a different set of opportunities for people. It's hard to see that when you're digging out of a hole to try to build something else. But I think you need to look ahead, and certainly let's not do anything that's going to be negative in terms of holding back the recovery. I mean, we should be measuring our policy response to what things are we investing in that can most quickly rebound the economy, accelerate what we're doing. And I don't know exactly, is it something to make restaurants more profitable when they can't fill up? I don't know what it is, but can we find ways to do some things? Because the economy is really hurting. People are hurting. We do have now these 4 months of unemployment payments and bonus payments that fortunately will help the pocketbook a bit. But there's, I think the big concern is business destruction as this goes on longer. I mean, the businesses, if you're in a business and you've decided, to shut down, and maybe things weren't that good before, and now it's just, then what happens? Maybe another business, if it's a restaurant, another one will come along. I mean, there's only so many restaurants, but how long does it take for that capital to be raised and hiring people? And so it gets to be a cascading effect the longer this goes on.
Bob Whitcomb, who, as you know, writes for us, has been flagging the issue of corporate debt for the last 2 years, saying that it's really going to create an extra problem going into the next recession, and that many businesses were running off of last month's cash and really running off of a lot of borrowing, both big companies and small companies, because money was so cheap for so long after the Great Recession. Now you add in an economic crisis like driven by the coronavirus. Isn't that part of it? Isn't this sort of, we were ready for a recession and now you're piling on maybe the greatest economic crisis on top of it?
Yeah, I don't know if corporate debt was as big a problem going into this. I mean, a lot of companies were fairly healthy. Certainly larger companies are fairly healthy, but it just doesn't take, when I look at the Paycheck Protection Program, which it seems like every single business has applied to that program.
Including the Los Angeles Lakers, Ruth Chris Steakhouses, you name it. They've put their finger in the pie.
Yeah, the whole idea of that was that, you get to get a forgiveness if you keep people employed. But if you're a restaurant, you can't really get that. You can get the loan, but you can't really get the forgiveness. And so that doesn't really help you. I think the program is a good one because it's given people a little bit of a breather. If you think about an accounting firm, a law firm, or I don't want to get into your business, but I mean, everyone is getting hit a bit in terms of their revenues, unless you make, personal protective gear or toilet paper or something like that. I mean, everyone is pulled back, and that's going to cascade. I mean, the business that ordered 100 units every month, all of a sudden it's like, you know what? Let's go 50 this month. It's we don't know what's going to happen, and then that just starts rippling through, and that's why manufacturing. A lot of people are saying that could be, the business activity will slow. We've seen what happened in the auto sector. Fortunately, that's going to start coming back, but it's the sooner we get out of this, the better, because each passing week and month makes it harder and harder.
As head of RIPEC, as the CEO, you represent a lot of business folks. They've got to be desperately concerned about increasing taxes as part of a solution to balancing this budget.
Well, we had some proposals to that effect earlier on. The legislative leadership has made it clear that that's not where they want to go, and I think they understand that short term that's not what we should do. I do get concerned because we haven't, as a government, the economy's been good for many years, and we haven't really had to do a lot of austerity. I mean, we do talk about difficult budget choices, difficult budget deficits and whatnot, but it hasn't really been actual cutting. It's been pretty much growth every year. And so I do think this will take a different approach than we've had since, we had negative revenues in the Great Recession. Right. The legislature and the governor had to deal with that. And we just haven't had that situation for over 9 years. So it's been a long time to get used to that.
Mike DiBiase, last word goes to you. What do people need to know?
I think that we all need to try to look at where we can get things back as fast as possible. I think the governor and her team are doing a great job. I would not question for a minute the rules and restrictions they have put in place. But the sooner that we can find, and both not only economically but socially and psychologically, the sooner we can start getting back to normal. Because this is a difficult blow, I think, to people. I don't need to tell you that, but not just businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all have to work together to, safely and quickly just get things going again.
Mike DiBiase, CEO of RIPEC, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody else, stay tuned throughout the day for updates from GoLocal. I want to thank all our guests today, and especially for Mike taking the time in this incredibly busy time in trying to figure out what the next steps of the state's economy is going to be in our business climate. Everyone, please stay safe and stay tuned for more updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.